Nintendo has been one of the more innovative companies over the years when it comes to video game tech. Hello everyone, I'm Johnny Hurricane, and this is our top 10 ideas that only Nintendo could pull off. Now, we won't be listing easy things like the Wii or even the Switch because, well, you know, everyone knows all about them already. So sit back, buckle up, and let's get started.
Number 10.
Before Rock Band and Guitar Hero, you could beat on bongos in Donkey Konga. Donkey Konga was a rhythm game that came with a special set of bongos that you could use to play the game. The premise was simple: pick a song and beat on the bongos at the right time. The title came with 33 playable songs including the Pokemon theme, Queen's We Will Rock You, and the B-52's Rock Lobster. Donkey Konga sold well, and it also had good review scores. It then had two sequels, Donkey Konga 2, which released globally, and Japan-only Donkey Konga 3. The game was also compatible with another Donkey Kong title on the GameCube, the platformer Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. Much like the rest of the items on this list, Nintendo quickly cut support. While Nintendo might not support it, expert Dark Souls players love to show off their boss-slaying finesse with the DK bongos. Maybe they were just a little too hardcore for Nintendo.
Number 9.
I'll admit that this one is pretty common in Nintendo lists. While not claiming to be a virtual reality, Nintendo did market the system as the first system to be able to display stereoscopic 3D. To use the hardware, players must put their faces into the looking glass and then start a game. As most people quickly found out, however, this was not comfortable at all. Some users also experienced nausea and dizziness, much like some users get from VR today. On top of that, the monochrome color scheme of the games put a strain on your eyes. All these factors combined with the high price point ultimately made the Virtual Boy a failure in Nintendo's eyes, and they discontinued it less than a year later. This was just a case of Nintendo being way too far ahead of the curve for their own good.
Number 8.
Coming in at number 8, we have the Game Boy camera and printer. I still actually remember the commercial for this when I was a kid. A kid at Christmas wakes up, opens up a lame Christmas sweater, and his parents hand him the Game Boy printer and his face lights up. Classic Nintendo marketing. The Game Boy camera was, of course, a way for you to take pictures with your Game Boy. Nintendo knew that the selfie would be a hit before people even knew what a selfie was. Along with being able to take pictures, you could also add stamps to those pictures or even fuse them together to create monstrosities. It also came with a few mini games that you could play, but I never had one, so I have no idea how good they were. It also had a few Easter eggs that would pop up from time to time. Apparently, if you picked the option to run in the menu, you would sometimes get a random face that would pop up and ask, "What are you running from?" The faces were creepy and would most likely scare children. Nintendo debated if they should make a Game Boy Advance camera, but they never did. Another example of Nintendo being ahead of their time, as cameras are now on all handheld devices.
Number 7.
The Wii is the most successful selling Nintendo console to date, and Wii Sports helped a lot with that. Finding a Wii was very hard at first, as most people remember, but the Wii Fit Balance Board was another nightmare to find. The casual market made the Wii such a huge success, and the same can be said about the Wii Balance Board. The idea that you could use a video game console to get in shape wasn't anything new, but with the install base of the Wii, it was a massive success. People were convinced that they could use this thing to get in shape without paying for a gym membership or even leaving the house. You hear about the success stories here and there, people losing 30 pounds, using it on a daily basis, all that business, but most people gave up after a week or two. Still, it did show that people were at least willing to get in shape, which is always nice, and the Wii Balance Board sold over 42 million units in its lifetime. That's really impressive, no matter how many people ended up using it for more than a week.
Number 6.
Coming in at number 6, we have R.O.B The Robot. R.O.B was a robot that you could buy with the NES, and you could play two games with it. You could either play Gyromite or Stack Up. Gyromite came with some peripherals for R.O.B, and it was used mainly to teach you how to use R.O.B. The direction pad was used to rotate R.O.B, and the A and B buttons were used to open and close its hands. What you basically did was you pick up a spinning top, move it to the other side of R.O.B, and drop it to make it start spinning. Then you pick it back up, and you drop it on the button where the second NES controller is hooked up. When you drop the spinner onto the button, it would either hit A or B, depending on what button you drop the spinner on. None of this might sound amazing, but back when I was like 5 and my buddies had one of these, it was out of this world. There's nothing he'd ever seen before. Sadly, R.O.B was discontinued pretty early and it was rare to find even back then. And if you want to get one today, it can cost upwards of $300.
Number 5.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Nintendo Biosensor. Maybe you remember an E3 press conference where Nintendo showed off this thing called the Vitality Sensor for the Wii. Well, before that, they had the Biosensor for the Nintendo 64. This was an exclusive to Japan, and it would monitor your heart rate and adjust games accordingly. Make that one game. It only ever worked for Tetris 64, and Nintendo stopped using it. To get it working, you would plug it into the Nintendo 64 controller and then clip it to your ear. From there, the sensor could determine your heart rate and send data to the game. For Tetris, this would change how quickly the blocks would fall. If you started to stress out, the blocks would actually fall quicker, encouraging you to remain calm under pressure. The idea could have had some widespread use if it was implemented correctly, but my guess is the clip on your ear started to hurt after a while, and obviously the Vitality Sensor never came out, so they just kind of dropped it altogether.
Number 4.
Coming in at number 4, we have the Nintendo e-reader. The e-reader was another idea that is actually used pretty commonly today on smartphones, except you scan codes instead of swiping a card through a reader. With the Nintendo e-reader, you could slide cards through the reader and then play the games that were attached to the cards. Old classics like Mario Brothers, Excitebike, and Balloon Fight could be used and played on your Game Boy Advance. I didn't really use it much for that, but I did use it for Animal Crossing. Using the e-reader, you could communicate with your GameCube in the post office of Animal Crossing. From there, you could get new items, new outfit designs, and new town tunes which would play when you spoke to certain characters. Sorta sounds like Breath of the Wild, right? But with amiibos? The e-reader actually lasted a really long time. Went from 2001 to 2008. Nice.
Number 3.
Coming in at number 3, we have the link cable. The link cable was a way to connect your Game Boy to other Game Boys before Wi-Fi was a thing. When Pokemon took the world by storm, the want and need to battle and trade came with it. With this little cable, you could connect and face each other or trade each other. A simple concept, and yet again showed that Nintendo was ahead of its time. While connecting two Game Boys was an awesome feat, the GameCube and Game Boy Advance connector was on a whole different level. It could be used as a controller for some games, or even as a second screen. Remind anyone of the Wii U? The game I remember this from most was Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. After the lack of support from Square on the N64, we finally got another Final Fantasy on a Nintendo system, and it was multiplayer to boot. Sounded great, right? Make sure you both have a Game Boy Advance and the link cables, or else you won't be able to play it though. It was a hassle, and if you did manage to play together, someone had to carry the bucket. Guess what? Nobody wants to carry the freaking bucket. There was one more generation of link cables for the Game Boy, but with Wi-Fi gaining a foothold and the DS on the horizon, it quietly faded away like many of the other Nintendo peripherals.
Number 2.
Coming in at number 2, we have the Nintendo Exertainment Bike. This is one I hadn't heard of. One of the other editors on the site pointed it out to me. Back in the day when Nintendo was trying to get into everything, they made an exercise bike for the Super Nintendo. It basically acts as a controller for a couple of different games on the Super Nintendo. The bike needs more power than the SNES can give, so it actually also comes with another box that plugs into the expansion port on the Super Nintendo. From there, you plug it in like a normal controller, plug the phone cable into the box, and you're good to go. You can then start up Mountain Bike Rally and start racing. Like most fitness equipment these days, when you go uphill in the game, it would actually add more resistance to the pedals and make it harder for you. The bike also had a control pad, buttons, and triggers on it for moving in-game. If you don't fancy riding a bike, you could just play Speed Racer, another game that worked with the bike. Crazily enough, Nintendo actually put out 2 versions of this bike, and it has since become one of the most rare pieces of Nintendo history to purchase.
Number 1.
Coming in at number 1, we have the Nintendo Knitting Machine. This is another one that a lot of people have never heard of. The reason for that is because it never made it out of development. Boasting that it could make not one or two, but a multitude of different unique designs, Nintendo was really stretching with this one. It is true that when it came to the NES, Nintendo went wild, but at least most of the other peripherals were gaming related. I really have no idea how you can make a game out of knitting. Maybe you could have had some designs in game and then the knitting machine would make them into a sweater for you? I don't know. Someone up the chain at Nintendo finally got wise to this and clearly cut off the project. Still, maybe Nintendo would be a major clothing brand today had this succeeded. Alright, there you have it. 10 ideas that only Nintendo could pull off, and one that they almost pulled off. If you liked what you saw, you know how it goes. Like, comment, subscribe, all that business, and check out our other top 10s on our top 10 playlist. Later.